All right, welcome yet again to another one of our behavior streams. Hold on, let me kill this thing before the feedback gets to me. All right, so we are continuing our series on our approach to ABA therapy. Okay. This has been a very long running series, and we are finally at its conclusion, I think. Okay. Because today I was scrambling, like, okay, is there anything else that I needed to talk to folks about? And everything else is kind of more about like, oh, programs and programming and things like that. Things that we've already kind of really went over fairly in depth. And so as a part of that initial kind of training or introduction to ABA, I didn't feel that it was that necessary to kind of delve into it. Okay. So today we're just gonna kind of go over a few more things I want to talk about, then we're gonna wrap it. It might be a very quick thing, it might be a lengthy thing. Who knows? I'm a chatterbox, and it's likely that it'll go the entire time. But we'll see. Hold on as I get set up here. All right. All right. ABA. Okay, big umbrella, encompasses a whole lot of things, and we were able to break it down into what made sense for us, which is the behavior management piece and the teaching skills piece. They're always kind of married together, like you can't take one without the other necessarily. However, when it takes what takes priority is getting the behaviors down, addressing the behaviors, working on the behavior management piece, utilizing things like reinforcement, punishment, and extinction to really promote pro-social behaviors and to eliminate and get rid of problematic maladaptive behaviors. Okay. And then we use those very same concepts, but we kind of codified them in methods of teaching. So we talked about things like discrete trial training, shaping, and chaining, as well as non-contingent. Okay, so remember there are two different ways to learn. There's learning through the consequences of our actions, and that's called operant conditioning. There's learning through the associations that we build with our environment. That's called classical conditioning. Discrete trial and shaping and chaining are a derivative of operant conditioning, whereas non-contingent is a derivative of classical conditioning. Most of the teaching occurs from this pairing that occurs versus in operant conditioning in discrete trial, it's based on the consequences that happen when they do things right and when they do things wrong. Okay. All right. And now remember, a discrete trial has these components to it. The main ones are instruction, response, and feedback on that response. The prompt always follows the instruction, and it's meant as a bridge. It's meant to help the child connect things that they know to the things that they don't know, right? Okay. And so what you're doing is the prompt facilitates the child's response. All right. Now, non-contingent teaching is based off of classical conditioning, this associating things. And so with non-contingent, it is solely based on the pairing that we do. So typically, like, oh, we would utilize this for most of our language programs, and we're pairing the visual with the sound. So when we do non-contingent, the child looks at the item and then we say what that item is. So pen. Okay. Now, like I said before, non-contingent nowadays is our own preferred method of teaching. When I first started, everything was taught via discrete trial. Okay. And like I said, non-contingent was an accident. Okay, it wasn't an intentional, like, oh, we're crafting a brand new way of doing things. It was just oh, let's try this and see if it'll just help the child accelerate their learning. So it was a complete accident that we kind of stumbled upon it. It's only when we start to like really realize the power of this method of teaching that we actually explored it further and further. And that's where, through all the kids that we worked with, by and far, non-contingent is superior to typical discrete child training when you're teaching kids language. Okay. Now, the thing is, everything ends in discrete trial. All non-contingent, all DTT, has to be checked if the child actually knows that in demand conditions, because that's all that life is. Life is one big demand condition. So it doesn't actually matter if you're like, hey, you know what? I sing beautifully, but I can't sing in front of anybody else. Well, that skill kind of is wasted. Okay. So for us, always, always, always check items for mastery in demand conditions in discrete trial training. Now, the thing is, ABA principles work on everybody. Okay, it's not isolated to the kids that we teach. I use ABA on my staff. I use ABA on our organization. I use ABA on my own kids, on my wife. Okay. Now, I don't do it maliciously, and I don't do it to further my own gains, as it were. Okay. I'm using ABA in what I consider an ethical and responsible way, which is helping to improve everyone's lives. All right. The exact procedures or protocols that are used can be very, very different from one individual to another, which makes ABA a little bit confusing for somebody brand new to it. Actually, it's probably confusing to a lot of BCBAs out there because they understand the textbook, but they actually don't understand how that textbook really connects to real life situations. All right. So, um, the thing is, and the thing you always have to remember, everyone is different from you are. I know, it's funny, like when you're younger and you kind of grow up, what actually happens for most of us is that we think that everybody was raised the way that we were raised, that they respond to the world, that we respond to the world. Okay? That we oftentimes make assumptions that people, everyone else in the world, is similar to yourself. And that is absolutely not true. Okay? People are different in their disposition from each other, in their initial abilities and their talents and their intelligence across a lot of different areas. At birth, they are different, one person from another, okay, across every single area. So I'm going to take my kids as an example. And I honestly, I didn't realize until I actually had kids just how different my kids were from each other. I always thought, like, dude, they come from the same gene pool. How, like, different could they possibly be from each other? Okay. I did not realize like they were polar opposites from the day that they were born. They were very, very different for each other. Okay, Eugene's showing a picture of her family and her sisters, and I think she feels the exact same way here. So now, whenever we take my kids to see the doctor, right? Like, ever since my son was like a little infant, she called him big-headed boy because his head's, I guess, size was big for his age, you know? And he always, like, on the growth charts would be near like the top 25% of kids his age, right? My daughter, on the other hand, is on the opposite. She's always like at that lower 25%, you know, and so she's small for her age and short for her age, different. Okay. Yes, that's only one aspect. Okay. I'm going to talk about more. Okay? My son runs cold. Okay. What that means is that it's hard to get him to sweat. Okay? Getting him to kind of like run and to do things, we can get him to do it. But to get him to run to the degree where he has to sweat takes an awful lot of work to get to. My daughter, when she used to go to sleep as a baby, okay, we would literally just set her down on the bed and we would see this pool of sweat just so surround her whole head, okay? Because that's how she ran. Okay, she would just sweat just like that, no problem, nothing, So she runs hot, and even like I would say without exception, every time when she was younger and she got sick, guess what? Her body's response was, crank up the fever, boys and girls. We got a germ in here. Time to burn it away. Okay. My son had a few fevers here there, but my daughter, I can, it was almost without exception. Every single time she got sick, we were staying up at night, rotating medicines and doing that kind of stuff. Okay. As a young child, my daughter was great at communicating. She didn't have the language, but she could clearly tell grandparents what she wanted to do. Oh, grab my hand, right? Yeah, right here. I want you to pick me up. Okay. My son, the complete opposite. Okay. He was just a bad communicator. He couldn't communicate non-verbally, but he also had a hard time communicating verbally. He was a late talker. Okay. And, we used to have games where we were like, oh, do you think anybody would understand what he was singing? And so we would like record him sing one of those popular kids songs and we'd play it for friends to see if they can guess what song it is. It's that bad. All right. I should pull up some of those videos that we have, but stark difference between the two. Okay. My son, laser focused. Even when he was really, really young, we could sit down with a book and he would be voracious. Like he really wants me to read more and 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 read more. Like he could just stand there and sit there all day with me and read the whole day. My daughter, okay, she might have an interest in a book. Sit me down. I turn the page. As soon as I turn the page, she's like, I'm done. I'm ready to go. Okay. Very different from each other, right? Okay. My daughter is mindful of everything that's going around her. Okay, she's into everybody's business. She knows what's going on with this person and that person and that. My son, that, oh really? That happened? When? Like he's blissfully unaware of what's going on around him. My son is a very honest kid. Okay, like he would ask, like, "Oh, can I have that candy?" I was like, "Nope, you can't have it." Then he just like any kid, he'll complain, he'll protest, he'll whine, he'll cry, he'll do all that stuff, but he won't take it. All right. My daughter, she'll sneak the candy. She'll sneak it. She'll find some way to open it. She'll eat it. The reason why we know, we find packaging in places, packaging that I know things that my son isn't interested in eating and my daughter is. My daughter, excellent with her coordination. Even when she is young, you give her like 5 items and she's like, oh, this underneath this underneath this arm. I heard this on my mouth, and she could carry those things. My son literally give him like 3 items and he doesn't know what to do. He's like, my hands are already full. I already have these 2 items. What am I supposed to do? Okay. I just want to give you all these examples. One, because I always like to share about my family and my kids and all that stuff. But it's really to highlight the differences between people, even among siblings, even though they're in the same gene pool, they can be completely different from each other. Now, because every child is different, you have to actually learn what's going to be effective for each child. So we don't run the same interventions for Marcus that we do for Samantha. We don't. Why? Because the things that will work for Marcus will not work for Samantha. The things that will work for Samantha will not work for Marcus because they are fundamentally different from each other. All right. So that's something that you always have to keep in mind is that when you kind of watch other people interacting with their kids and teaching their kids, and especially when they use interventions with their own kids, you have to always keep in mind that your child is different from those other kids and you're tailoring your interventions to be the most effective for your child, not for somebody else's child. Now, the other point that I want to make is that the apple does not fall far from the tree. Okay, so what does that mean? It means both my kids share features of both me and my wife. Now, we like to point at each other when the kids are being stubborn. It's like, that's you, that's you, okay? But we both know, that we're both stubborn individuals and our kids are going to be just as stubborn as we are, okay? Now, the thing is, stubbornness can be a great quality if it's directed in the right place, right? A lot of people call it persistence. A lot of people like it's good in certain ways. It's only bad and it's only stubborn when you hold on to something that's not good for you, that you stubbornly adhere to something that's wrong. Okay. However, if you stubbornly adhere to something that's right, that's a good quality to have. All right. So the features that we all have, you have to understand there's good things and bad things to it. And it's our job to kind of churn a lot of those things around so that the child receives the benefit of that trait. Now, like I said, parents and kids share similar features. It's only recently, I say within the past 6 months, but that my daughter told me like, "Oh yeah, when I'm tired, I do this." Okay, guess what I do when I'm tired? Okay, like you'll know when I haven't gotten enough sleep when you see my because it's just okay. And several years ago, when I was visiting my dad, you know, he does the exact same thing, right? Like, so when he's tired, this is what he does. Okay. So there are certain characteristics and tendencies that we have from our parents and our kids will get from us. Okay. Not everything, sometimes, but not all the time. But a lot of the things that your child has, the qualities that they have, come from either you or your spouse. Okay. Now, the good thing is that when you know what makes you nervous or anxious, when you know what gets you upset or angry, and you also know what things help to calm you down or relax you, it gives you a leg up. Because if your child has some of the same qualities that you do, most likely the things that help you can possibly be the solutions to some of the things that bother your child. All right. So that's something that you have to be good about, which is observation, understanding yourself and your spouse so that you can kind of see like, oh, what tendencies, what good strengths, but what weaknesses does everybody share? Because then once you kind of understand all those, it makes treatment a lot easier. Okay. Because if you know, like, oh, you know what? And I'll say this for myself, I need like a heaviness to me when I sleep. In order for me to sleep soundly and deeply, I need like very weighted and very, very warm. My wife's the opposite, like she gets a little bit hot, the covers get kicked off, all that stuff. So for her to get a restful night's sleep is completely different conditions for me to get a restful night's sleep. Okay. Now, how it makes it better is when you can see these tendencies and you can see it in the child, you can create the situations that's going to facilitate things. So my son is very, very much like me. He could be sweating up a storm and he'll still want to be bundled up under the blankets and things like that. Whereas my daughter's just like my wife. She won't like any level of hot. She's kicking off. She won't keep those blankets on her. All right. So, in that way, when you kind of notice these things, it allows you to craft better interventions. Yeah. The biggest takeaway that I want everyone to understand, especially when you have a child that's diagnosed with autism, is that your child is much, 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 much smarter and much, 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 much more capable than you think they are. Okay? We've proven that time and time again with every child that we work with because the parents are always surprised by what their child is capable of doing. Okay? And what you have to realize is that most of the time, it's not your child's ability that's inhibiting them. It's their motivation. Okay? They just don't care to respond. They just don't care to do the right thing. It's not, generally speaking, the ability to do something or not to do something. It's the motivation to do those things. So when we take a look at like what makes us really, really good, for us, we don't get caught up in a lot of stuff. We don't get caught up in what's happening in society at the moment, and we don't get caught up with a lot of the talk around us. All we care about is, are we effective? We have this kid. These are the problems that they present. A year later, 6 months later, whatever time frame you're looking at, are they improved? Have we helped them substantively? Okay. So the funny thing is, like, most of the time when I'm consulting with families and when I'm consulting with parents, they should like, oh, do you think this will work? Do you think this will work with my child, or do you think this intervention is the right intervention? And I always tell them like, I don't know. Probably it will, but I can't guarantee anything. However, what I do is based on the situation, will craft an intervention that I think is going to be very effective with the child. But no matter how much I love the intervention, at the heart of it, I only care that it's effective or not. If it's not, time for that intervention to go. Right? So when things work, when they're effective, keep on doing them. However, when you have tried things for a period of time and they don't work, then you need to make some changes. And that's the part that I feel that we are really good at, is when we try something and it doesn't work, we will recognize it and then we're going to game plan from what we learned from why it didn't work and problem solve and try to find a method that will work. Okay. So you have to understand just because it didn't work that one time doesn't actually mean the intervention won't work. A lot of times behaviors will get worse before they get better, especially if you're using extinction. Okay? So you have to have patience. Okay? All interventions need time before you can really say is something effective or not effective. Just because you tried it one time and it worked and didn't work doesn't make it an effective or ineffective intervention. What you have to do is apply it consistently over a period of time, and then you can take a look at, oh, what happened? Is the behavior better or worse than when we started this intervention? Okay. All right. Now, the biggest thing is for us, learn from when things don't work. Don't beat yourself up. Don't, do anything other than trying to figure out, like, well, why did this not work? So, a long time ago, I was doing this consult with one of our families, right? And I use the calm down chair all the time. It has worked to great effect. And that's what we told the family to do. So when I visited Korea and I met up with this family, they're like, no, the protests aren't decreasing, like, and to me, I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, because like in almost without any exception, the calm down chair has been like an incredible methodology, an incredible intervention for us. And so we're like, well, I wonder why it's not working. So it comes to light that, like the child wants something, the parents say no, they don't get it, the child flips out, they put them in the calm down chair. It takes like 30, 45 minutes for the child to calm down. Finally, the child comes down. And then guess what happened? The parents gave them the food that they were, or the item that they were wanting in the first place, right? So, so what do you have? Anytime I say no to you, you engage in this very long protest, after which you get calm, you get the item that you're looking for. So the sequence of events is I have to protest to get the thing that I've been denied, right? So that's what you're looking for is like, well, why? Why isn't it working when it should be working? What's happening, right? So things like a lot of times, when you work with families, families are all over the map in terms of their ability to follow through. But see, I know when parents follow through and I know when they don't because I can see it in their child's behaviors. You can't fake it. You can't. You can't like, oh, okay, because Bob's here today, I'm going to try because the child will react based on how they've learned from you in their environment. So when I see the child misbehaving and I see them misbehaving in very particular ways, I already know, oh yeah, you're not following through. All right. So the big thing is whenever you try stuff, analyze it. Try to figure out why something isn't working. It's in its intended way. And then you make adjustments to the intervention to make it more effective. Okay? Now, if you're to take a look at like what we do at ABA Bears is we attack problem behaviors. We attack it. We're like a bulldog. Like we're whatever the problem is, we're gonna go after it. Okay. Because problem behaviors always, always, always interfere with the child's learning and interfere with their ability to perform at the level that their abilities are. Okay. And our philosophy from the time that we started this company was that if you can eliminate, get rid of all these problem behaviors that the child has, then the child will be able to achieve to whatever their ability level is. Now, the thing is, I don't know what their ability level is because their hidden under all of these problematic behaviors. It's only when you strip away all the problem behaviors that you get the real child there, the real child coming out. And that's when you really understand, like, oh, my child isn't the child right in front of me right now with all these problem behaviors. The problem behaviors are suffocating my child. The problem behaviors are keeping my child inside. And I need to strip away all these so that they can come out. That's when our kids develop senses of humor, when that's our kids, their personalities really come out, and you can see it from dead face, from stoic face, like nothing affects me. The whole world I don't care about, to you can see that sparkle in their eye. You can see their brain working all the time. Okay. That's what we want our kids to be able to get to by stripping away all of these problem behaviors. That's why so much of my lecture has been about the behavior management piece, because that for us is one of the key pieces that you need to have to maximize the child's gain. All right, hold on a second. Need a little water break here. Now, the other thing that you have to learn to do is build a strong foundation for the child's learning. A lot of parents are anxious to move programs along, to jump programs, to like, okay, I don't think I need this program. Let's go to a different program, a more advanced program. And I would say that it's almost always a giant mistake that parents make. Because it doesn't matter how fast and how far your child goes, without a strong foundation for you to build on, for the learning to be added onto, without that, it's a house of cards. It's going to come all crumbling down on you. Okay? So take the time to build out these skills, build out their frustration tolerance. Okay, build out their communication skills, build out their imitation skills, their language skills, their self-help skills. Teach to whatever deficits your child has, but teach at the foundational level. Okay? Teach at the easiest levels first and get them to respond well to those levels. Okay? It's not a sexy thing. It's not a pretty thing. Building a foundation is not oh, look at this beautiful mural. Okay. Foundation building is like, this is a solid structure. Man, I can do anything here and nothing's going to happen to it. But that's not sexy. All right. So, in treatment, though, that's actually the most important piece, because everything else is a mirage, it's an illusion. Okay. You think your child knows a lot more, but they never perform up to your expectations or their ability level. Okay. So any program, it's better to have high standards at a very easy low level. Okay. That way, as you make the task more difficult, they're already banging things out. They're already like, oh, moving well and responding great at an easy level. It makes making that next step so much easier. Okay. So what that means is when you're doing objects, the child should be, what is it? Pen. What is it? Water bottle. Okay. If your child is, what is it? Pen. They're not ready to advance. Okay. You're like, oh, they have it. They have pen. No. Okay. Part of advancement is tied to their performance, right? And how quickly they perform something. Right? When you push too far too fast, They might have a lot of different skills built up, but again, it's built on this house of cards that one thing can knock it all down. Okay. So don't be in a rush. Look at all those basic programs that Amy talks about. Okay. Understand it. You know, don't try to rush through it thinking like, oh, my child already knows all this stuff. The question isn't about whether your child knows something or not. It's that when you tell them to do it, do they actually do it 100% of the time? Do they do it even 80% of the time? 60? 50? Most of the time, it's like when they feel like it. If I offer something that they really want, then they'll do it. But most of the time, they don't. And that's the key, especially for us at the beginning, is like it doesn't matter if we're working on skills that the child has already learned or knows already. If they are not performing, it means the same thing that they don't know it. So work on that responding piece, work on it at low levels, getting proficiency. Okay. Now, for us, we do what is called early intensive behavior intervention, EIBI. Okay. And that's all considered the basics of the Lovaas approach to ABA treatment. So we start with very young kids in the US, that's a US age. We try to work with kids that are under the age of 4. Okay? And then when they're young, the younger they are, we don't need to provide as many hours. But as they get into the 3.5-year-old range, that's when they're getting 40 plus hours a week. Okay. Now, the big thing that most people are always like, 40 hours, you cruel, mean animals. Like, I work 40 hours a week and I'm so tired. Like, all right, the thing is, we're teaching kids how to play. All right. We're teaching kids to enjoy life, So if you had a team of people dedicated to your betterment, the more hours that they're dedicated to it, the better off you're going to be. All right. So you can't conceptualize it as, oh, 40 hours of them doing nothing but being grilled in the chair. No, we don't do that. That's bad ABA. And you should never do that. Okay. We're in and out with our teaching. We call the child over. They're successful. We get them out. We're playing with them. We're reinforcing them. We're getting them to play with toys. We're getting them to ask for things, to do all of these very, very important kid-like things that they need to learn how to do. Right? So that's the thing, is when you take a look at those 40 hours, you're thinking like, oh my God, that's way too much. Okay. In the US, our parents can't get enough. The more hours, great. Get them in there. Okay. Because they know that their kids are not being sat down for 3.5 hours straight, being grilled on nothing but academic tasks. We work on teaching a child a variety of play, from puzzles to shape sorters to um, uh, skateboarding, baseball playing, you name it. We teach everything under the sun. We're a comprehensive program. If your child needs to learn it, we'll find some way to teach it to them. Okay. That's how we approach things. So don't look at that 40 hours and be like, okay. 40 hours is nothing. Okay. The whole idea here is that treatment has started for the child. Okay. And it's ongoing until they don't need any treatment anymore. Okay. Now, for us, we assemble a team of about 3 to 5 behavior therapists to work with each child. And that doesn't mean like 3 to 5 people are at the house at the exact same time. No, what it means is that, oh, Monday through Saturday, which is our usual work days, we have 3 to 5 therapists scattered throughout the week providing session. Okay. Now, the thing is, when you have 3 to 5 therapists working per case, they have to be really well coordinated. Why? Because we operate like a relay race, right? One therapist takes this child as far as they can go. And the idea is like, I'm handing off the baton to the next therapist so they continue on and advance the child. Okay. So all the work that we do is coordinated by the data that we take. The data helps every therapist know where the child was last and how they can help the child best going forward. Okay. Now, that's not enough for us. We also have weekly team meetings where we get the whole team together and we talk about what's going right, what's going wrong, and we get to problem solve everything. We get to figure out, like, hey, if this isn't working, what will? And then we'll try things and we'll settle on, like, okay, this is, I think, the approach that we're going to take, and then that's where we get all the team members to practice those things, to get good with those things so that they can implement it across the week. Okay. Like I said, sessions are usually scheduled 6 days a week here. Sometimes we'll work on Sundays as well when the child needs help at church or church-related activities, something that's happened on a Sunday, you know. Um, but most of the time, it's a Monday through Saturday schedule with morning and afternoon sessions scattered throughout that week, and that you have one therapist coming out for a morning session and different therapists coming out for the afternoon session. Okay. I told you before, there is no break from treatment. For us, the family is a vital, 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 vital part of the treatment team. Okay. What that means is that we don't actually expect parents to be behavior therapists. What we expect therapists, sorry, what we expect parents to do and families to do is when they know their child's capable of doing something, they make them do it. Okay. That when we found an intervention that works at getting rid of problematic behaviors, then we'll train them how to do it, but we'll expect them to do it when we're not there. Because what you're looking at is this is how the child operates in treatment, and this is how they operate outside of treatment. And what you want is to have as less or least amount of um, difference as possible from treatment and non-treatment times, right? Okay. So when therapists are there versus when it's just at home with parents and whatnot, what we want is it's going to be a slight difference. Okay. We don't expect it to be 100%. It's great if it is, but it almost never happens. Why? Because you're family, your parents, you're not therapists, this is the thing that I tell all of my therapists. Hey, doesn't matter how bad that child is with you for that session. It really doesn't. Why? Because you get to have a break. You get to break for lunch. You get to go see another child. You have a break. Whereas parents are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The child protests at 7 a.m. They're likely to protest again at 8:30, then 9, and throughout the day, they're likely to do this. So being a parent is a very, very different thing than being a therapist, right? So we don't expect that 100%, oh, parents are no different. But what we have seen is that in treatment, the families that we have failed with are the families that can't even remotely do what we do when there's a large discrepancy between what we do and what the parents do. Okay? In these occasions, what happens is the child develops two personalities, what we call an on personality and off personality. So what happens is as soon as the therapist steps to the door, on. Okay. They behave in a very, very good way. They listen. They do everything that they need to do. As soon as the therapist leaves the house, the personality switches. Okay. Not a good thing, a horrible thing. Very, very bad in treatment. That's why for us, we train families to know what interventions to use. We train families so they understand what capability and what their child's able to do at any point in time, so that in their everyday lives, when they know their child's capable of doing something, they make them do it. Okay. So we teach them how to put their socks on. Once we teach it, then we make sure that parents are not doing it for them, but making their child do it on their own. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. All right. Now, sessions for us last about 3.5 hours in duration. The younger the kid goes, usually the less per hour it goes, So like really young kids, like 2 years old, we might only do like 2 hour sessions, 2.5 as they slowly get older. But that's really what we're looking at is like, oh, we're targeting how much teaching time before they get so tired as to be ineffective. And because we don't want the treatment to be ineffective for the child, we want the treatment to be maximally effective. Okay? And then the program checklist, which has all of the skills that we're currently working on typically are about 15 to 18 programs that we're working on every single session so that the child can learn those items. So as a behavior therapist, you get to the house, and then what you're doing is we have something called the program update. And the program update is basically any changes that we've made to the program, like any thing that we're doing different. So the therapist is up to speed with all the changes. Then the behavior therapist will read the program data. What happened with the child in the last several sittings with other behavior therapists? That way, when you see, oh, this is what they're struggling with, or oh, this is what they're doing really well with, then you can accurately decide on an appropriate teaching strategy for that sitting. So if you know, oh, they really struggle with this, so my plan is I need to go in and heavily, heavily prompt them to be successful before withdrawing the prompt. So you have a game plan about how you're going to teach that particular program for that particular session. And then you get all the needed materials, and then you'll call the child over and run the program. Okay. Now, this is something that all new parents really, really struggle with. And honestly, like a lot of staff also struggle with this, which is keep the sittings as short and as successful as you possibly can. People get greedy. People like, oh, they did so much. Let me add more work to you. Okay. Wrong approach. Okay. It's kind of like, um, I've seen them do it at schools a lot. Oh, today the child's listening. So let's give them even more work to do because the next time they might not listen. Right. So what happens in those instances is that you're punishing good behavior and you're rewarding bad behavior, right? So when on the days that the child is ornery, they don't want to do something, you give them less to do. Okay, that only reinforces the bad behaviors. On the other side, oh, the child's really listening to me today. And instead of heavily reinforcing that, you go and punish it by giving them more work. Okay, wrong strategy, right? The exact opposite strategy that you want to employ. All right. So when you know that the child is struggling with something or the child hasn't learned something, make sure to keep the child successful. Prompt as much as you need to prompt to get them successful until they're independent with that task. Okay. Then you're going to reinforce their good responding by letting them go from the task. So you're going to, yeah, good job. Okay, go play. Okay. Now, that's only when they try their hardest, they do their best, when they are listening to you. However, when they are responding poorly, they're not listening to you, then what your job is is to follow through. Okay. You're going to stay there for however long it takes in order for the child to listen to your instructions. So you're working through all their problem behaviors, if they have any. You're keeping the child in the chair and having them respond to you in the way that you know that they're capable of responding. And you're just going to keep on doing that, okay, until the child listens to you, right? Then you can, yeah, good job, and let them go. Okay. This is the hardest thing for parents to learn, which is to turn around quickly. I don't mean like, yeah, like turning around. What I mean is you want to have a very short memory. Okay. Don't hold a grudge. Right. Don't be like, oh, you are just so bad with me. I'm going to withhold reinforcement even after you start listening to me. No, you have a very short memory. You don't hold a grudge. As soon as the child changes from being and engaging in problem behaviors to being pro-social to listening to you, you change along with them. Be quick about it. Okay. Don't be, oh, you were so not listening to me earlier, so I'm going to hold this against you as you've turned. Now, the problem is the child's turned around their behaviors, and because you hold this grudge or you're like not reinforcing them the way that you need to reinforce them, what in effect you're doing is you're punishing the good responding. You're punishing when they themselves are turning it around. Okay? So when the child does their best, you let them go and play. Okay. Now, if the child has some play skills, what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and let them play independently, you know? If they don't, then what we do is we'll set up a toy in advance of running that program. When they're done, we'll say go play, but we'll direct them to the toy that we want them to play with. We'll sit with the child and prompt the child to play successfully with that item, and then they'll have some downtime while the therapist takes data. Okay? We always take data. Always, for practically everything. Okay. Now, the thing is, the data, okay, helps keeps us grounded. We take data for behaviors, we take data for the programs. And why I say it keeps us grounded is as a human being, your memory is bad. Your memory is faulty. Okay. And we allow certain things to influence our memory more or less. And what happens is that then we don't remember things the way that they actually were. We remember it in the way that our minds color it. All right. And that's what the data does is keeps us very, very grounded. Okay. So I can say without a doubt, all the parents that go through our treatment program, they sometimes forget just how bad their kids were when they started in treatment. Okay. Because they've grown with the kids. As the kids have progressed, as they learned, as they developed more and more skills, became more and more pro-social, their problem behaviors decreased, they forget just how poorly their child behaved before. Okay. It's only when you remind them, they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. Oh my God, I remember he used to do that all the time. Now he never does that. But that's what happens is that the data that we take keeps us knowing exactly what the child's failing with, where they're failing, and how we can look at addressing whatever needs that they have. Okay. Now, after you finish taking the data, the behavior therapist will go and play and interact with the child a little bit. Then they'll disengage from that, read up the next program update, read the data from the next program, plan for how you want to teach, set up the program, and then boom, you're calling the child back over to run another program. Now, we kind of go into this cyclical nature of it where, oh, okay, I run a program, the child has opportunities to play, I write up the data, I get ready for the next program, call the child back over, run another program, and we just keep on going in this loop here. Okay. Then what we like to do is we take a break for the child every 45 minutes to an hour. Okay. And that break is not for them just to rest. That break is to just take them out of the room that we've been sitting in, out of the room that most of the teaching has occurred, get them outside, get them around the house and working on other skills. So those are the times that we'll take them outside to teach them bike riding or scooter, teaching them to throw a ball or to catch a ball, teaching them to how to play the Switch or other board games and whatnot. And it's just a break away from the room so that we work on other activities with the child. Okay. Then when they're done, you restart this whole cycle again where you look up a program, you check up on it, you get ready, strategize for the teaching, and then you go call the child over, you teach it, they get some free time, and that cycle starts again until the next 45 to 60 minutes is up. Then you again go and take a break with the child. Okay. Now, all of this is just telling you what we do in intensive behavior intervention, right? This is what we do in the US. This is what we do in parts of Korea to provide treatment. For folks that are doing all this at home, you can adapt it. Okay. Um, you don't actually need a set time like we do because we have staff. We have to pay them, we have to coordinate when they're going to be there, when they're not. As a parent doing these type of interventions and treatments, you can adapt that. It doesn't have to be a fixed time. Okay. The teaching that you can do can be incorporated in your everyday life. Okay. So let's say that you're like, oh, I'm going to teach a child a program, and then I'll write up a little data just to remind myself on how well they did. Then I'll go and I'll wash the dishes. Okay. Then I'll set up for the next program. I'll teach the child program. Oh, now it's time for me to get dinner ready. Okay. It can be a part of your everyday lives. It doesn't have to be set. Okay. Utilize natural teaching opportunities. Teaching is not tied to the table and chair. Okay? It's not tied exactly to the programs on the checklist. What you want to do is, oh, when there are natural opportunities for them to do certain things, like, oh, there's an opportunity for them to point to something that they want. So I would prompt them to do it correctly. There's an opportunity for them to communicate with me, and I'll prompt them to either answer or to do those things. But you use everyday opportunities to teach them the skills that they're going to need. Yeah. All right. So find and create opportunities for your child to communicate, to tolerate different things in their environment, to use the language that they're capable of using, to use skills that they learned in programs. Okay. So that's really what you're looking at doing on an everyday basis, oh, the child wants to play with a toy, and I know that this is one of their favorite toys, right? So I might put this favorite toy high up, and it forces them to ask for it, whether I've taught them to point or I've taught them to ask, like, puzzle, please, or whatever it is. You're forcing that opportunity in there so that they get an opportunity to practice those things. Okay. So you either find opportunities to utilize those situations or you create them. Okay. The biggest strength and the biggest weakness that all parents have is that they are great at anticipating their child's needs. Okay. The problem here is that when your child has no needs, there is no motivation. When you are hungry, it motivates you to figure out how to get food. When you are cold, it motivates you to find ways to get yourself warm. Okay? So when you go and feed your child a lot before they're ever hungry, they never experience hunger. They don't have a need to ask for anything. Okay? If you put a coat or a big jacket on your child before they experience being cold, they never have a need to learn to communicate those skills. Without that need, there's a lack of motivation. And if you can rewind this stream back up to the beginning, motivation is a huge component of what we target. Okay? You also want to be really, really good at prioritizing the problem behaviors that you want to eliminate. And I want to be very, very clear to all parents out there because all parents always like, but these self-stimulatory behaviors, they're very embarrassing and they, occur so often and things like that. Generally speaking, those are the least problematic behaviors your child exhibits. Okay. Don't worry about those. Okay. What you really want to do is aggression, you have to get rid of. Okay. Self injury, you have to get rid of. Running away from you, you have to get rid of. Okay. You have to be very, very patient, but very, very targeted with eliminating these specific problem behaviors. And some of the biggest problem behaviors is just not listening to you, okay? Or being non-compliant, so you tell them to do something, but they do it wrong. Okay, we have one of our kids that does that. She knows how to write her name beautifully, but when she's mad, she'll deliberately write her name too big or too small. Anyway, no, erase it, get started again. No, erase it, get started again. Okay, that's what we have to do for her. Okay. So for us, target all of these massive big behavior problems for reduction. Don't worry about the self-stims right now. Okay. They are the least problematic of your child's behaviors. Okay. Now, a couple last points here. And this is something that I've told all parents. I give nothing but credit to you parents that have to work with your own kids. Okay. It is the single hardest thing that you will ever do in your life. Okay? So be forgiving of yourself. You're going to make mistakes. It's okay. It's okay. Don't feel guilty. Guilt is your enemy. So you learn to live without guilt. Okay? Learn from the mistakes you make, though. Okay? Don't keep on repeating the same mistakes. Oh, you know what? I always yell at them for this. Has it improved? No. Well, then, let's stop doing that, shall we? Okay. Learn from the mistakes that you made. Okay. Change it up. Okay. Because that's how you're going to improve things. Okay. I tell everybody ABA is a very, very hard approach. It's not made for every family, it's not made for every person because some people just can't handle it. Okay. It's not for them. Okay. But what I can tell you is that it requires somebody willing to make a sacrifice. Sacrificing your child's happiness today, sacrificing your happiness today, your family's happiness today, so that next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, your life is substantively better. And most of the time, what you're doing as a family is let me take that small relief today only to suffer the pain a lot worse a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. And that's the exact wrong approach to take. Okay? Your child is only going to get bigger, faster, stronger, and smarter. So when you fail to address them when they're 2 years old, it's not going to get easier at 5. It's definitely going to get much harder at 10 and at 15. right? So there's no real kicking the can down the line. You can't do it, but you're going to be the one experiencing all that pain, and it's going to come in spades. It's going to be significantly worse than you learning to bite the bullet today and doing what you need to do today. Right? Oh, we are at the end here. All right. So we have a lot of different things that we've gone over, and undoubtedly, I probably didn't adequately answer or describe or explain certain aspects as well as I could have. Right? I'm a human being. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. I try, but as is the case often, it's better. We always strive for perfection. We just never quite hit it, right? So this is your opportunity after watching all of the previous streams for any questions that you have to start posting them if you haven't already. Okay, get those questions in so that next week what I'm going to do is we're going to hold a Q&A for all the stuff that we've gone over so far. All right. Wow, I'm completely exhausted. Now before you leave, remember, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and tell all your friends about us. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to visit us.